Hello, everyone. Jesse is back here with more Torchlight stuff. I did a video yesterday about the season patch notes, which is this page that you can access from the official Torchlight XD website. Um, and I'm going to go through the balance adjustments patch notes as well. But before we do that, I found the official launch landing page that has some screenshots for this upcoming season. In addition to being a season reset, it turns out that this is actually the official release date for like Steam, right? It's not in early access anymore. It is now, I guess, a full, quote unquote, full game. So let's just scroll through the screenshots real quick. We talked about some of this stuff yesterday. This screen here, this is the cube of Rapacity. So every single map, just like in Path of Exile season content, this season content will appear in every map. So you basically have the option to mess around with your cube every map and get some free extra loot. It's basically just more loot at the very end of your map. And we'll talk more about the other stuff. This is what the cube looks like at the end of your map. This is a new hero. Escapist Bang is sort of like a trapper miner kind of character where you like throw your bombs and then your bombs cast the spell for you. Very, very similar to like a trap or mine archetype. This is the new hero trait for Oracle Thea, which is it's like an ascendancy. It's a new ascendancy for an existing hero. Seems pretty cool as well. So this little panel here, it's called the Statue of the New God. That basically is it's sort of like the Sanctum Relic system in Path of Exile, and also sort of not. So these little tiles, this is like Tetris, right? You got to squeeze them in there. So that's kind of like Sanctum Relics. But each one of these little tiles actually gives us stats. It gives our character direct benefit. So again, kind of like Sanctum Relics. The difference is that Sanctum Relics you could not craft yourself. You couldn't change them. You couldn't upgrade them. These are much more customizable. And you can basically power them up, yourself manually with in-game currency that you generate from playing the season. So it's cool, it's interesting, and it gives you apparently the ability to get the equivalent of like a forbidden jewel, an additional ascendancy point almost. You basically can get a whole new, as I understand it, you can get a whole new hero trait, or not a hero trait, a notable in your skill tree from these. So very cool, very interesting. Some new legendary gear, pretty cool. There's a new system that it's hard to describe, but it's like order and chaos, and it's kind of like, the only thing I could think of was like Rampage. If you know what Rampage is in Path of Exile, it's basically like some counter that builds up on your character. Another way to think of it is maybe it's kind of like Rage, but also not quite like Rage because they already have Rage in this game. It's basically some other power that is on your player character that has a counter. You go 1 to 100. But anyways, yeah, more sentries. These are the new skills. Another strike, a couple of strike skills. Pretty cool. New mechanics, spell burst, spell machine gun. It's pretty apt. Basically, it's like Unleash. So if you know what Unleash is in Path of Exile, you have multiple spells lined up or stacked up. Then you drop them all at once. They all go back to back to back. So spell machine gun, pretty descriptive way of describing it. They've updated the crafting system, which we're not going to get into that this video. It's not too terribly complicated, especially compared to Path of Exile. Path of Exile, as you know, has metamorph currency, the catalysts, and it has the fossils as options. And then it has, forget about linking and socketing, and then there's quality, and then there's enchantments and implicits, and there's like a lot of other layers on layers on layers. Items, like rare item in this game, generally is a lot more simple. But I think this basically adds a little bit of extra nuance. And you can basically have a tier above max tier. So think like an essence, right? You can have 27% attack speed is the max, except unless you use an essence, then 30% attack speed is the max. I think that they have some system that supports that here. Yeah, tons and tons of changes and updates. As I mentioned last video, they are updating the trade house, which I'm like, oh, praise be, because the UI, designed with mobile in mind. I would say, and as a full screen PC gamer, I mean, I have a big, 240 hertz monitor that is generally not for this specific type of game. I'm glad that they've made some UI and menuing changes, system changes. So yeah, more and more and more. I mean, I love it. I am just, the more I read about it, the more excited I am, the more I'm leaning into it. Just a big fan of this. So, last thing I wanted to do this video is actually go through the balance changes that we did not get to yesterday. So, yesterday we talked about the season balance changes, the gameplay content that's specifically added in the new season. So, most of the new stuff is listed here. But this little button here takes you to the balance adjustments from the previous season. So if you're coming from season 2. So this is the first thing I want to talk about. Affliction is damage over time mechanic, the fundamental core damage over time mechanic. That this is doubling damage over time. Basically, it is doubling dot damage. So ignite. There's not poison in this game. It's called wilt. That's just getting doubled. But if you scroll down to all of the skill node changes that they made, basically every single damage over time node got cut in half. So they're just putting more power into affliction and cutting some power from other places. So curse skills no longer have casting animations. This is kind of interesting because this game has curse on hit. And I think virtually every single person just plays with curse on hit and doesn't bother self-casting curses. Maybe this will convince some people to do that. Terra skills is like a AoE skill. It's kind of hard to describe, but yeah, it's just an AoE skill that has usually some sort of duration effect. They updated sentries. They added a bunch of new sentry skills. So if you're a minion player, sentries in this game are treated as minions. So it's not like totems. It is like totems, but it's not like totems. Yeah, this I've already been through a lot of this. There's a lot here. I mean, this is a long document. We're not going to read this entire thing. I don't even have time to. I have things to do, but I did scan through this last night. They did a lot of nerfing to some of the most OP sentry skills. So Flame Pillar got nerfed pretty aggressively because it was extremely strong. Both of the past 2 seasons was extremely strong. I think they want people to play the new sentry skills that were just added. That's my interpretation. There's a lot of stuff about minions, some bug fixes. This is all mostly mapping stuff. I'm just scrolling through this really fast. So the new hero, Escapist Bing, it's pretty interesting. The damage is definitely there. I think it might be a little bit clunky, right? Because most builds you don't have to stop and like throw a trap or a mine. It's actually kind of the opposite of Path of Exile. In a lot of ways, a seismic trap in Path of Exile is the opposite of clunky. You basically throw traps and you just run. You throw traps, you run. You throw traps, you run. This game, you run the whole time. Every build is so overpowered. You basically blow up the screen, and some of these have little delays to them. And there's a timer, like cooldown kind of stuff. So this is kind of a cooldown rotation character a little bit, which I know for a fact from a damage standpoint, someone's going to figure out how to make it busted. I mean, they're going to like one-shot Ubers for sure. But from like a mapping standpoint, I don't actually think that it's like overwhelmingly amazing. I think, which is crazy because I do plan on getting the season pass, which means I'm going to have access to this character. But I don't know. I play slams. I love slams. Maybe I'll just do that. We'll see. This is the new Ascendancy Oracle Thea. So this, I think they've already done numerical changes to this even since they published it. Because right now Thea is based on the power charge, frenzy charge, endurance charge equivalent in this game, which is stacks, is tenacity stacks, agility stacks, and focus stacks. Focus blessings. I'm sorry. So the blessing stacks that you can get with Thea is like the highest that you could of any other character. You can get like 10, 11, 12 focus blessing stacks. I mean, something crazy, right? And this ramps that up even more. It basically, you can like almost double your focus blessing stacks so you could get past season from like 10 to, I don't know, 15, 16. I was reading a little bit about this, someone else's interpretation of this, and it seems super overpowered. We'll see, but so you think of like a power charge stacker. I think that there's an AOE involved as well. The Divine Blessing is what a focus blessing is called, and then the Divine Realm is basically a big AOE. And in that AOE, you do more damage. Your blessings change from tenacity to agility and so on. But yeah, think power charge stacker like an occultist or an assassin. Moving along, they made some adjustments to Berserker Rihan, which is the starter melee class. So if you wanted to play an attack skill, Cyclone, or something like that, they made some adjustments here. Pretty relevant change to Tunnel Vision. They reduced the additional damage by a substantial amount. It's 0.75 to 0.5 multiplier. It's not insignificant. I think that's a nerf. I think that's a nerf to certain strike skills. Sweeping Strike, I think, was very popular last league, and so I think they were trying to pull that power back a little bit. High attack speed builds in general, very, very, very strong in this game. So they pulled that back. This also, it got major nerfed. Basically, there's a way to stack additional damage on the Seething Silhouette for Rihan, and I'm not sure how this mechanic worked, but I think people were abusing it, and so they effectively nerfed the max stacks of it. And it looks like this also got nerfed. 2 additional max life for 15 resistance. Yeah, so this did get nerfed a little bit. So I did not play Seething Silhouette, but apparently it was very strong. They changed some minion stuff. I think they actually, I want to say they did mild nerves. Oh no, this looks like a buff. This space-time stuff, this guy, the Yuga character, who's also available as a starting character, is very, very weak. Both Season 1 and Season 2, it's one of the most underwhelming and worst performing characters. It's a spellcaster. It's the equivalent of like an elementalist, but bad damage and slow, right? And bad clear. I mean, it's like an elementalist, but the opposite of an elementalist. This looks like a change to the dot version. Space-time elapse is the damage over time version. And it looks like a buff, so good for them. All right, Gemma, Icefire Fusion. This was the strongest class. This is also available as a starter, and this is really more of the Elementalist class. It's ice and fire. Very, very strong last season. In fact, frankly, super, super overpowered last season. To the point where, yeah, I mean, people were cheesing everything with this build. So they literally nerfed it by 50%. Quite literally, they cut the damage in half. So this is just a straight 50% nerf. So that's a tough one. Tough L for players who love this class. I'm sure it's still incredibly strong. That's the funny thing. I'm sure it's still incredibly strong. And then this part, the damage will not be calculated again. This basically was like double dipping. which is something Path of Exile does with damage conversion. I mean, obviously, all the buffs to both damage types get added. Um, this trait, made that sort of extreme. I mean, you could get basically like 3x damage from this trait. And so, Frostbitten Heart. This is another one I did not play. I'm not super familiar with. It's the cold version of Frostfire Gemma. And it's like you're stacking Frostbite and things like that. I don't think it was very popular last season or very strong. So I think they did buff it maybe a little bit. Looks like they nerfed actually some of the mana stuff. So I don't know. People were playing it with mana, I suppose. There's these items called relics, and we're not going to get into all this. Basically, it's like a jewel. These are jewel slots. Legendary relics, relic of memories. These are jewel slots. They did a lot of nerfing to jewels. In fact, from scrolling through this, like this is almost all nerfs because the legendary jewels were super overpowered last season. They totally changed a lot of these. Talents. So this is like skill tree changes, and this is something that's funny when I roast Path of Exile's lack of balance for the past few seasons. This is all of this from down here all the way to up here. I mean, this is an extreme amount of skill tree changes. I mean, they fundamentally changed a lot of these nodes, right? They just switched them to new mechanics, and so I'm just excited to play because there's no way that even the best theory crafters with their little calculators are going to actually figure out optimized trees just based on reading this, because there's a lot here. They nerfed stuff, they buffed stuff, lesser played stuff got bumped, overplayed stuff got pulled back. Path of Exile doesn't do this. Like, they haven't. There's, which is frustrating. So, really love to see it. Freaking love to see it. These are the new skills. Pretty cool stuff. Yeah, I think we're kind of at the end here. Yeah. So, my big conclusion is that at the end of every map, you have the chance to get a little cube thing that gives you an additional character panel that gives you a Sanctum Relic that buffs your character. That's the summary that I got for you. For balance changes, it's hard to summarize this. That's kind of why it's exciting, actually. It's hard to focus on like, oh, this one skill was buffed, you should play it. Well, I can't tell you that. And to be honest, I think if anyone on YouTube tries to tell you that, they're full of shit. I would say go and play literally whatever skill you want. This game is the Wild West, really. I mean, it's anarchy out there. Nobody knows what's cool, what's good, what's bad, what's OP. The YouTube video that the Torchlight community manager and game designer put out, it's like an hour and a half long on the Torchlight official YouTube. I'll actually put it in the YouTube description of my video. Jack, the designer, talks a lot about game balance towards the end of the video. And I know his English is not his first language, but he does a really good job illustrating the idea that everyone should have fun playing every build should be fun to play, and every build should feel good to play. And I haven't felt that too much from Path of Exile, so it's just really encouraging to hear him say that, with the knowledge that people like to have their customization and personalization in action RPGs, and people consume content. They're so ravenous for content, myself included. It was really encouraging to hear him talk about game balance in that capacity. So anyways, big ups. I mean, the game literally launches in like 8-9 hours, something like that. So I'll see you on there. Take care.